Hey everybody, Mike here, and this is the Asus ROG G752VT, the updated version of Asus's popular 17-inch gaming laptop. The G752VT is built on a Skylake platform and gets Nvidia 970M graphics. Other G752 models will be available with Nvidia 980M chips and 4K screens, but these aspects aside, all the G752s share the same traits. So even if you're interested in a different configuration than the one we have for this review, this clip is still going to be worth watching. Okay, so let's get this started. The new 17-inch model looks nowhere like any of its predecessors. Asus dumped the black theme for completely new looks, with a mix of silver, orange and black elements. The lid cover is made from a sheet of brushed aluminum, the hinge is orange and gets a Republic of Gamers engraving, while the entire lower body gets a plastic shell. It kind of looks like brushed metal, but I'm pretty sure that's plastic. One final element you'll notice on the bottom is the strip of transparent plexiglass that showcases the heat pipes and part of the cooling fans. That's a nice touch, but this window will scratch easily. Now, if you lift up the screen, you'll notice the interior has been redesigned as well. The silver elements on the sides get the textured finishing, while the black surface on the palm rest and around the keys is soft and grippy, just like on the previous G751. Overall though, I'm not entirely sold on this new design. It's not ugly, just a bit too flashy for my taste. I'm not a big fan of the light bars on the hood either, but luckily they can be switched off. The ROG logo on the other hand remains backlit all the time. This aside, I feel not much has changed when it comes to the build quality. The lower part of the G752 is rock solid and barely bulges even when pressed hardly, while the aluminum lid still flexes a fair bit. However, this has no impact on the panel whatsoever, so I won't worry about it much. The screen itself is strongly built as well, and the hinge is smooth and sturdy. Just like on the older 17-inch ROG laptops though, it can only lean back to about 120 degrees, which is enough for desk use, but might not suffice for other scenarios. One last aspect to mention here is the fact that the G752 is still a large and heavy laptop. In fact, it's wider than most of the other 17-inchers due to having the cooling system on the back, and has an overall larger footprint than the G751. It's slightly thinner though, but it's still around 4 cm thick. Okay, enough about the outer design changes. Let's turn our attention to some of the practical aspects. A close look at the sides will reveal a complete I/O with 4 USB slots, HDMI and mini DP video output, a Thunderbolt 3 connector, a card reader and an optical drive, among others. However, most of the ports are placed on the right edge, which means cables will definitely get in the way of your mouse. Personally, I prefer layouts that put the ports on the left or on the back. Then there's the keyboard and the trackpad, which have been inherited from the G751. The keyboard's layout is really close to perfection, with full-size keys across the board and nicely spaced directional keys. There's also a set of 5 configurable macro keys on the top left side, this time placed further away from the escape key than on the previous model. The keyboard is of course backlit and the red LEDs can be adjusted to 3 levels of brightness. And as a novelty, there's a new font used for the writing on the keys, which looks geeky and is a good fit for a gaming machine. But how does this keyboard type? Well, it's one of the better ones I've ever tested. The keys are firm and have just the perfect amount of drop. The feedback is great and there's little flex in the frame, which all combined lead to an excellent typing experience, with no time required to get used to the keyboard's feel and specifics. I also like the trackpad. Its surface is large, smooth and mostly responsive. It handles swipes and gestures well, but it does miss some taps here and there, and unfortunately there's no way to adjust the sensitivity from the software. The mechanical click buttons are also fairly good. As for the screen, well, the G752VT is available with a Full HD IPS panel at the time of this clip, and gamers will be happy to know that the display includes G-Sync support. There's little to complain about the panel's quality, which is bright, provides deep contrast, fairly accurate colors and good viewing angles. It's not a wide-gamut panel and it is not as sharp as the UHD options available on some of the other laptops, but the G752 will also get a UHD option on the higher-end configurations. Still, for the G752VT, the 1080p screen is the ideal match. And that's because there's only an Nvidia 970M graphics chip on this configuration, which can handle most of the recent games at 1080p, but would otherwise struggle with higher resolutions. And with that in mind, let's turn our attention on the hardware and this laptop's performance. Okay, our test unit gets the Intel Core i7-6700HQ quad-core processor, only 8GB of RAM, and a 1TB hard drive for storage. In other words, this is the most basic version that's going to be available in stores, and I believe it should be the version of interest for many of you. And that's because on the back of this laptop there's a service bay which provides very easy access to 2 of the RAM slots, the hard drive and the 2 PCIe M.2 slots. That means you can add more RAM and the type of SSD storage you might want, paying less than if you were to buy these upgrades from Asus. Now, even with the lower end specs, the review G752 performs well. It handles everyday activities at ease, any kind of multimedia content, and most of the recent games. I've tried a couple of them, and you'll find the exact results as well as benchmark scores and the details on how the laptop performs in stress tests in the written review available on ultrabookreview.com. It's the first link in the description. There's a lot to say about this, and I really can't include all the details in a video. However, I can tell you that the G752VT runs fairly cool even under serious load, and the fans, while always active, are not very loud. The cooling system blows the hot air towards the back, away from the user. On top of that, the capable audio system with speakers hidden behind the screen and the subwoofer placed on the belly pushes good quality sound and is more than capable of covering any fan noise. Okay, there's one more thing we should cover before we get to draw the line on this laptop, and that's battery life. The G752VT gets only a 67 Wh battery, a significant downgrade from the one on the G751. That, combined with the fact that there's no Optimus on this laptop, leads to pretty poor battery life results. You should expect around 3 hours of very light use and 1 to 2 hours of life on a charge when performing more demanding chores. In conclusion, the Asus ROG G752VT gets a new set of clothes, a slightly improved display, and overall more modern and slightly more powerful hardware than the ROG G751 series. It does keep the same keyboard and trackpad, but on the other hand it has a larger footprint and the battery life takes a hit. So while this is without a doubt a great computer, it's merely the kind of incremental upgrade OEMs have been pushing lately, and I believe it's not necessarily going to be the ideal buy for everyone. Asus have had a strong foothold in the 17-inch gaming laptop segment for a few years now, but the competition hasn't been slackening. The ROG G752VT with its Nvidia 970M chip is a good pick for those of you who absolutely need a large screen, don't care much about portability, and have around $1,500 to $1,700 to spend for their machines. But it does have to face a handful of either more affordable, more compact, or more powerful rivals. We'll talk about them in the article on ultrabookreview.com. Anyway, with that in mind, it's time to wrap this up. Thanks for watching, make sure to hit that thumbs up button if you enjoyed the video and get in touch in the comment section or on the site if you have any questions or anything to add. I'll see you in the next clip.